Welcome back again, everybody. Last week I talked about humility. Now let me explore today from a bit of another angle. Self-consciousness. When I started college at 17, I found myself thrust into an entirely new social group. I didn't know anybody in my course. I was hanging around people I'd never met before. And in classic Irish fashion, we bonded first by cracking jokes and secondly by taking the piss out of each other. A weird thing occurred to me during this experience. If I went really, really far at taking the piss out of myself, at being self-deprecating, the person I was chatting to would not only laugh, but would find themselves at a loss for words, totally speechless. They had nothing left to take the piss out of me with. I had been so self-insulting that they had nothing to say. That left them open for me to take the piss out of them, and ultimately we all got a laugh. Now, I'm not advocating running around taking the piss out of yourself and promptly jeering everybody else around you. That would make you a very strange type of bully. However, it's only on reflection that I realised that I had accidentally stumbled upon something quite profound during my first couple of weeks in college. That same power of humility that I talked about last week. My accidental humility meant I didn't take myself too seriously. I was able to laugh at myself. Not because I thought I was laughable, but because why not? Jokes are funny, regardless of what you're joking about. I coincidentally found making jokes about myself funny, which disarmed the people around me from making me feel down by making jokes about me. So what's the point of what I'm talking about? Look, if you haven't already noticed, I have a very large head. This was something that represented the bullseye of what I was bullied about when I started secondary school. And it made me fucking furious. I took the insults regarding my head size very, very personally. I couldn't change the size of my head. And at times, I was surrounded by people who would point and laugh at me. I often felt inferior, ugly, humiliated. Now, having humility and being humiliated are two entirely different things. Humility is something I feel can be healthily cultivated. Humility is something that has great utility. In other words, humility is very useful. Humiliation is something entirely different, however. Something that attempts to devalue your humanity. It is not something that I wish upon anybody. Now, thankfully, by the time I left secondary school, I found myself having more power over who I was and how I looked. Yes, I have a massive head, and look, that's okay. In fact, it can be funny. The contrast between me and my head size and somebody who has a small head size is stark, and that is funny. Thankfully, I now find myself being able to laugh at the size of my skull. And fortunately for me, my skull size has brought with it some great benefits. A large brain, an empathy for people who look different, and a compassion for my poor mother who had to give birth to me. But listen, in all seriousness, I wish I didn't have to wait until college to feel more confident. Part of me wishes I could speak to my teenage self and say, look, Pat, you have a big head, and that's okay. If people point it out, fair play to them. Who fucking cares? Nobody worth being concerned about. In hindsight, I suppose the biggest reason that I got so angry if somebody shouted something like fathead at me were my principles. A principle is a word that refers to the rules that we live by. So I had a principle in my mind of never let anybody insult you, ever. On reflection, I don't think this was the best principle to have. I can only ever control my own actions. I can't control the actions of other people. Ironically, a principle I now have goes as follows. Never let your principles get in the way of your well-being. Never let your principles get in the way of your well-being. What principles do you have? Are there certain rules that you live by? For example, do you always wash your hands after going to the bathroom? Do you only tell the truth? Do you never let people see you cry? Do you refuse to eat animals? Are there certain things you will and won't let people say to you? Do these principles always serve you? Can you think of an instance in which they might not serve you? Are you self-conscious? Does your self-consciousness serve you? So today, I expanded on the idea of humility to include self-consciousness and our principles. I invited you again to ask yourself the question of what serves you and what burdens you. Do your principles and your self-consciousness serve you, or do they burden you? Think about it. Thanks a million for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again next week.
Nice.